We're back. Welcome back, everybody. My name is Evan, and we're so glad that you've joined us on the BCC Pod. This is where we take what's happening in our church and what we're learning together and bring it into unscripted conversations that dive just a little bit deeper. Whether you're tuning in on your drive, you're at the gym, or you're just relaxing at home, we are so glad that you're here. Normally, we take this time to sit down with the speaker from the past weekend who preached on Sunday, which would have been Andrew, but he is away with some other Bethany staff at our denomination's General Assembly this week. So I get the pleasure this time around to sit down and chat with our Director of Care, Patty Vandekamp, who is our second guest ever. You're our first repeat guest. Which means, I think that means that you did just smashingly the first time.
Well, so I must have.
Bring you back for the second time. But yeah, we were talking, we launched into a new series this week on resiliency and how to build resiliency and called Bounce Back. And I think before we kind of hit record, we were talking about the election that took place last night.
We sure were.
Because we're recording this on Tuesday. You're listening to this Wednesday or after. And as we record this, we still don't really know. They're still counting ballots. So we don't really know what's going to happen with that. And there's still trade war things. And the Pope died.
I know. So many world events happened.
So many things have happened. Yeah, since January. Like, it's wild. I was listening to, not to keep talking politics, but I was listening to a podcast with some political leaders that was recorded in January. And it's wild to see the difference between, like, listening to that now based on what they knew back then. Like, this was before trade wars. This was before any kind of, like, tariff or shakeup. And to hear how they were thinking about now back then is so wild because things seem to change kind of every single day, right?
Yep, 100%.
What do you think for yourself, like, would you consider resiliency to be something like that's that you've kind of built up in your own life? Like, what does resiliency look like for you when we approach that topic?
So I think resiliency is when you get to a place where you don't necessarily let pressure get to you, but you can kind of work through things and not be crushed by some of the circumstances that are happening in your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I almost think too, I think of it in terms of like resiliency. Building resiliency kind of can help turn down the volume a little bit on the stuff that we go through. That it's like resiliency is not somehow removing you from what you're going through. It's not pulling you out of situations. Like, things are still going to happen, right? The world is going to continue to turn, but that your capacity to handle those things and your capacity to grow through them is larger the more kind of resilient you are, right?
I think too, it's boundaries, like even sometimes having to set boundaries for myself for like when things are like, we're talking about the election or we're talking about tariffs and about how many things have changed in the last couple of months, right? Yeah. So being able to put it away for a bit rather than being so 100% focused on what's happening and constantly wanting to check, right? And those kinds of things. So it's having boundaries with other people, but also knowing myself well enough to know when I'm feeling angst now, this needs to probably stop for a bit so I can pull myself together.
I need a bit of a check out.
I need to check out, right? Yeah.
Because I think too, maybe another good way to put it is like resiliency makes sure that the things that you go through don't control you, right? That like building resiliency in our lives means that, like you said, like we're not, you're able to take those times to say, oh no, I don't need to look at that right now. Do you find that you're often sucked in by kind of things that are going on, like news-wise and world-wise? Like
I do right now.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard not to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because those sort of things can be so sneaky, and I think so hard to detect, especially when it's so accessible. Like it's really easy to just like check in on the news quick, right? When your phone's in your pocket, right? Or like just like for people who have investments or right to just like check the stock market real quick just to see, right?
Yeah.
And when really in those moments, like we're reaching out in those moments to try and get some sort of relief, right?
Yeah.
But it's actually not where relief is going to come from, right? It's actually
Exactly, because
it'll do the opposite.
Yeah, I could go to scroll for a bit, but I end up where I shouldn't be.
Right, you're like down some rabbit hole, or
right. I've got a good intent to go in and check something, and then next thing I know, I'm stuck scrolling, and so it's hard to not do that.
Yeah.
So that's why the boundaries is a healthy thing, right?
Yeah.
And yeah.
Whether you've been at Bethany for a while or you're new to our community, we have so many different ways to connect this spring. From family nights to courses to Phoenix Fest to worship nights and more, there is something for everyone. We also don't just want to be experiencing these events ourselves, but we want to be inviting people in our lives, friends, neighbors, family members, people in our spheres of influence to join us in these communities and in these events.
We talked about the marriage course last time.
Oh, yeah.
And it's finished.
Yeah, and it's coming back again.
And it's coming back. It was so great. It's coming back.
Do you want to talk to me a bit about what this past marriage course looked like, some of the benefits, some of the good things that came out of it, and what you're excited for kind of looking to the next one?
Yeah, so we ran the course. It's a 7-week course, and we just finished it. And last time I was here on the podcast, I announced that it was going to happen.
Yeah.
It went incredibly well. We had 7 couples.
Wow.
And the leaders did an incredible job setting up the room. They started with a beautiful meal, watched a video, and had some time to just reflect with each other. And so it went so well, we're running another one almost back to back, starting in May.
Amazing. It's very cool, and I think very timely as well, that when we talk about resiliency and bouncing back and all those sort of things, there's an aspect to that is personal for us in our everyday lives, but there's a huge aspect to that in our relationships and how resilient a couple you are, and building that so that you can weather seasons together as a couple, no matter what that looks like. So definitely something to check out. It's also super affordable as well when it comes to courses.
Yeah.
So definitely make sure to check that out. So you can check out the link in the description or go to bethanycc.ca/upcoming to learn more, to find out dates, and to invite your people. So we'll see you there. So we have some questions today, some from the congregation and some that I tossed in just for fun and just to try and trip you up. Not actually. I do that for Mills, but I don't do that for guests. But we can
see what happens.
We can dive into the first one. So it says, what does it truly mean to be resilient in a world that constantly seems to demand more from us? Is resilience ever something innate, or can it be cultivated? I might actually add to this one too, not just in a world that constantly seems to demand more from us, but also in a world that seems constantly more chaotic. How can we be resilient in that? And I was interested when this question came in, that this idea of is resiliency ever something innate, or can it be cultivated? And I think the whole idea of this whole series is that it can be cultivated, right? That it is. Maybe we can take that in kind of two parts. There are kind of two aspects to that question.
Sure. So I think that resiliency, it's not just about bouncing back, but it's growing through adversity, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And not letting the pressure of what's happening around us kind of define us, right? It's it's time for growth.
Right.
And I feel like what Andrew says on Sunday mornings, right? It's about transformation. And so it's because there's a lot of information coming in and into our into our brains and our minds. And so just, knowing that we can be transformed through adversity. Yeah. If we let it. It's not always easy. It doesn't, I'm saying that, but I'm not saying it doesn't take time to figure that out.
Yeah. It's almost like resiliency is not letting the problem set the tone, right? Or it's not letting the situation set the tone, right? It's saying hey, wait, I know what to do. I've got a toolbox. I can get through this, and this doesn't have to just, this doesn't have to throw me into a time of just maintenance, right? Like you're saying, right? I think Mills referenced it as post-traumatic growth. Yes. I think was his line, which I thought was really good. I'm just currently trying to pull up the quote that he had on it. Post-traumatic growth is the positive psychological change experienced as a result of struggling with highly challenging, highly stressful life circumstances. These circumstances represent significant challenges to the adaptive resources of the individual and pose significant challenges to the individual's way of understanding the world and their place in it. It's a very long quote. I'm not going to read the other half of it. But I think it's interesting. Quote. It's a great quote, right? This idea that like, that struggle and challenge can be a doorway if we let it. And that resiliency holds, I think, a lot of weight in how we kind of can get there, I guess, if that makes sense. Right? And
I think for some people, it's a little bit more natural, too. Like some people can bounce back really quickly, and then others, it takes more time.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's different, like we're all unique and different in how we respond to events that happen to us. But yeah, I think like even probably over the last 5 years, I can't believe it's been 5 years since everything seems to have changed.
I know, right?
But it's like you said, right? Learning different tools so that you can learn to respond better to things that happen, right? Rather than being super reactionary.
Right.
Because I feel like right now, where we are, like with everything constantly changing or keep hearing different things, it's learning, okay, how am I going to respond in this moment and kind of continue to like, nurture that so that you can develop more resiliency.
Yeah. I think sometimes culturally, resiliency can look like detachment. It can look like, or like head in the sand or like numbing out.
Yeah.
And I don't think that like that's not resiliency, right? Like that resiliency isn't some sort of like detached or like disembodied, like putting your head down and just trudging through things, right? That it's actually something way more kind of redemptive, right? Or like way more, kind of meaningful than that, right? It's not just about getting from point A to point B, right? But actually like it recognizes, I think, being resilient is recognizing what is going on and understanding the weight of what you're going through or what the world is going through, all those sort of things, and still being able to get through it in a healthy and growth-oriented way.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I don't think putting your head in the sand is necessarily a helpful thing to do. Sometimes it's for a little bit, maybe, on occasion, but probably not all the time.
Not all the time.
No, not all the time.
The second question we have says, in today's culture of instant gratification, how can we develop the patience necessary to build lasting resilience?
So I would say that patience is probably almost countercultural in our world because everything is always coming at us so fast. Like we don't like to wait, right? We're kind of the instant gratification people, like, and we can get things so quickly now.
Right.
So like learning resiliency and patience it's almost like a practice, right? It's almost, something that we need to remind ourselves to continue to do so that we can have that because we don't live in a world that really allows for stillness.
Right.
And so creating space for that is healthy because it slows your mind down, it slows your body down.
Yeah.
Helps you take a nice deep breath and kind of calm your nerves, right? In a world that you're always stimulated.
Yeah.
So creating space for that is, I think it's really important.
I like what you said there about like patience not being rewarded in culture because in a lot of ways, resiliency is not the quick option. That more often than not, resiliency is leaning in and saying like, no, actually, I'm going to take the harder approach here, right? That like it would be easier for me to just disconnect and check out or numb out with different things, but like I'm actually going to recognize what this looks like and the reality of it and choose to lean in and grow through it, which is the longer, more patient, more kind of step-by-step way to go through something. It is the harder one, but is the better yes in that way, right? So in a lot of ways, like it's the idea of resiliency and growth through bad times is so counterculture in a culture that both says, oh, you can just numb out, right? There are a million different ways that you can check out, and you can do it fast, and you can get those things fast, and you can, right? Like, get through this in the quickest way possible because that's the best way possible.
Right. And it's one of those things too where I feel like once you get like in the waiting, there's also like a lot of learning.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that by rushing always, you're kind of missing out. Mm-hmm. Even though it's harder, like there's some very valuable lessons and things that can be learned by taking the longer route, right?
Mm-hmm.
And by having patience and just waiting to see what can happen.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's like that, like we often talk around here, faithful next steps in the right direction,
mm-hmm.
right? And that often, what navigating a crisis looks like often
mm-hmm.
looks like that, right? Just like faithful next steps in the right
mm-hmm.
direction, right?
And when you're in a crisis, you don't want to be in a crisis. You want to get out of it.
Right. So as fast as possible.
As fast as possible. Nobody really wants to live in a crisis. So
yeah,
and the answers come, I feel like, the longer we wait or the more patient we are. There's just so much learning to be done and just like being faithful in that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I got one more question for us today.
All right.
So the last one says, what has building resiliency looked like for you? What spiritual practices, rhythms, or tools are or have been helpful for you?
Another loaded question. Yeah, I think for me, it's been learning or unlearning a lot of things. I think I said that last time I was here too. Mm-hmm. Learning to not feel shame when I don't have it all together, right? Like being able to find spaces of healing where it is okay to just let it go and dump it. Mm-hmm. And it's not easy to always find those safe spaces, but I have been able to. Yeah. And so that's been like a real incredible gift in my life.
Yeah, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. I over the past kind of year, maybe a little under a year, have been getting into more like embodied meditation. Okay. So not just like kind of like thought meditation, but doing something with my hands as a form of meditation. So I've actually gotten very into clay sculpting.
Oh, tell me more.
So there's one. Watch, Andrew's going to come back and be like, what was that podcast that you made? There was a morning, because like last year, I had started to develop and deal with a lot of anxiety in my life. Sure. And one of the things that was really helpful was in kind of times of anxiety, just disconnecting from my phone and from everything. And there was one day that I had seen something online and I was like, oh, I bet I could make that, because I didn't want to spend the like $70 that it was. And I happened to have some clay lying around from years ago. Yeah. And I started working on it, and I didn't touch my phone for like 2 hours, and I didn't listen to anything, like just full quiet.
Amazing.
And stillness. And I just kept it up ever since. And it's like, just like full quiet, full calm, gives my hands something to work with. And I just get to connect with Jesus, kind of work through things, think about things, meditate. Like,
I love that for you. That's great.
Yeah. And like that sort of thing. Like if you're someone who finds it very hard in spiritual practices or, to focus, I definitely recommend doing something with your hands while you take out that time. Like, find something you love and, kind of use it as a meditative practice, whether that's like, Laura who works with us, goes for walks all the time, right? Mm-hmm. And she lives on a ravine, so she'll go on kind of like nature walks to connect with God, or other people will cycle, or like all sorts of things, right? Or maybe you're into baking, whatever it looks like, right? Kind of those like those things that can help you kind of just still a little bit and kind of like disconnect from the situation for a minute, not as a way of numbing, but as a way to connect in with Jesus, right?
Yeah, I like that. And I think sometimes we put pressure on ourselves to do things like do our spiritual practice in a certain way, but being able to find something that works for you is what matters. Like this time of year for me is an incredible time of year, right?
Oh,
when the gardens everything's popping up, and every time I get home, I can look at my garden, I can sit on my front porch and just watch things pop up. And
I'm considering moving this podcast to a windowless room so that we never have to record as the sun's streaming in.
As
and we're
it's
just
streaming
like,
in, and we're like, can we go outside?
get us outside.
Yeah. So for me, this like gardening, all of that is super helpful. The winter is hard. I've done some restorative yoga, which I
cool.
found, like an 8-week session. It's been a couple of years since I've done that, but at the time, it was incredibly helpful for me because I had to slow down for like an hour and 20 minutes, unplug and breathe.
Yeah.
And I found that, really helpful too.
And as we talk about spiritual practices, like they kind of work themselves so well into this conversation about resiliency because when we're kind of connected into them in not out of obligation, but out of kind of growth and redemption, that our spiritual practices should be moments of rest for us, right? That communion and connection with Jesus should be something that is life-giving and filling and not always easy, but that those should be things that give us rest, which is really important in that conversation of resiliency.
I was recently talking to someone and they said, Jesus is as close as our breath. And that really impacted me because we breathe all the time. And it was a reminder that he is always with us. And yet we feel like we need to go find time for him. But in reality, he is that close to us. And so I found that to be incredibly comforting.
It's also worth saying that if you struggle with a lot of persistent kind of, whether it's persistent worry about things that are happening in your own life or abroad, or that it just kind of things like this and world events tend to feel like a bit of a dripping faucet sometimes. Like if you're like me, that you have a hard time kind of unplugging, some like back pocket prayers can be really helpful. Like things like the breath prayer or the Jesus prayer. Or some of these other ones, or like making your own ones that like when those things come up for you and when you notice like those things come up, you have a bit of a go-to. Defense sounds really intense to say that, right? But like when those worries come up, to be able to have something kind of in the toolbox that you can go through wherever you're at, just to be able to pray like, Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, right? Like, or those sort of things, just to be able to kind of meet those worries with something, right? Can be really helpful.
And breathe in the good, right? And breathe out the not so good.
Yes.
Just send it away.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a little card in my wallet. I got it at... I did a funeral for someone, and the person that passed away always carried these cards with her. And so at the funeral, there were all these little cards that people could pick and put in their wallets. And so I have one in my wallet. Yeah. It's a Bible verse, but it's super, every time I open it, it's bright yellow. So I see it, and it's kind of always a little reminder when I open that up.
I love that. Well, that is a wrap for today's episode. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. We love having these conversations and diving a little bit deeper into things, but they're even better when you're a part of them. So if you've got questions, thoughts, or topics that you'd love to hear about, shoot us a text at 905-937-5300, or you can email me or Andrew at Evan or Andrew at bethanycc.ca, and we'll answer your questions on the pod. We would love to hear from you. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the BCC pod so you never miss an episode. And if you're enjoying the podcast, do us a favor. Leave us a quick review or rating, because it's the simplest way to help others find us and be encouraged as well. Thanks again to Patty for joining us today and chatting with me. And thanks for joining us as you listen. We'll see you all on Sunday and back here next week. See ya.